In this session, I want to teach you the common mistakes that people who just learn After Effects make. Let me explain the first mistake with an example. Suppose I draw a ball like this. Use the V key on the keyboard to move the ball and place it here. Use Y to move the anchor point and hold Ctrl to place it exactly in the middle of the ball. Hit P on the keyboard and create a position keyframe. For example, in this frame, I move the ball upwards. And in second 1, we bring the ball down again. Suppose we want to create a bouncing ball. Do you see the handles created here? You can change the color of the layer to better see the color of the handles. If you click on this keyframe, the handle will be displayed. You can move these handles this way and make such a motion. These handles are called Bezier handles, which can determine how a motion moves. These curves are created automatically. Hit N to shorten the work area and play the animation. If I move the ball in this frame, you will see that a curve is created. You can also delete this curve. Suppose the ball wants to leave the scene directly when it hits the ground. Click this point while holding down Ctrl and Alt. You can see that the curve is gone and become a straight line. For example, when it hits the ground, I want to leave the scene very quickly. By holding Ctrl Alt and clicking on any of these curves, we can remove the curve smooth. If we hold down Ctrl Alt again and click it, it becomes a curve. So far, you've learned how to edit motions with these curves. Let me remove these keyframes and teach you the main problem. Let me explain this with another example. Suppose this ball is off the scene and I want to animate it to the right. But I want it to stand it in the middle of the screen for 5 or 10 frames, and then move to the right. Keyframe the first frame in the position, go to the second one, and move the ball to the right by holding the shift. I will create a keyframe here. I want it to freeze here for 5 to 10 frames, so I will make a copy of this keyframe. Move CTI 10 frames forward, and paste with Ctrl V. Now if you look at the building keyframe, the X and Y axis specifications are the same for both keyframes, 859 by 550. But there is a problem if I play the animation. Hit N. Do you see the problem? When the ball reaches the middle of the screen, instead of staying in place, it moves slightly backwards and then forwards. But I want to stand without moving in the middle of the page. The keyframes of both are the same, but where does the problem come from? To understand the problem, I select these two keyframes. By holding down the Shift key and down arrow, I lower the ball slightly. If you pay attention to this, the problem is because of these curves that the After Effects program has created automatically. Because I brought the ball down, you can see the path of the ball on the curve very well. But if we didn't lower the ball, it would move in its place on the curve. Press Ctrl Z to undo. So you understood why it moves in its place. Now suppose you made such an animation and this problem happened, and you don't know how to fix it. There are several ways to fix it. The first, and of course the easiest way, is to select the Convert Vertex Tool option from the Pen tool. Select this keyframe. This will turn it yellow. Any color you choose here. You can choose different colors depending on the background. Now, as you can see, there are two handles. If you click on this point once with this tool, you will see that the right handle is removed. I also select the second keyframe, and by clicking on this point, you will see that all its handles are removed. Now if you look closely, you can see that we were able to solve this problem. We can also adjust the motion speed by moving the keyframes. For example, I will bring these two keyframes here and increase the distance between them a little. You can see that the problem has been fixed. So with the Convert Vertex tool, which was the first method, we were able to fix it. Press Ctrl Z several times to teach you the second method. To fix this problem in the second method, I click on this keyframe to make it blue. By holding down Ctrl Alt and clicking on this keyframe, the shape of the keyframe will change. Its shape is exactly like a left arrow, like this icon in the preview panel. This allows the keyframe to make no move until the next keyframe, and it stays in place without moving. This keyframe is called Hold Keyframe. It means its motion remains constant until the next keyframe. This is the second method to fix this problem, which is simpler than the previous method. The better way that I suggest myself is the third way. Let me remove these keyframes to teach you the third method. A better way is to remove this option which automatically creates a curve from the After Effects settings. In this case, the curves are not created automatically. To do this, select the General option from the Edit menu and then Preferences. In the settings that open, you must check the Default Spatial Interpolation to Linear option. This option creates linear Bezier instead of curves. Okay, if I recreate the previous motion, for example, I move the ball forward till here. And in this frame, here, you see that the curve is no longer created and the movements are linear. In this case, the motions are created linearly, not curved. If you needed a curve in one place, hold down Ctrl Alt and click on that point to make this curve appear. And if you don't need the curve, we'll click on it again by holding down Ctrl Alt. My suggestion is to create your movement linearly, and if you need a curve somewhere, hold down Ctrl Alt and click on it to make the curve appear. I remove these keyframes and create the first scenario. Create a keyframe here. I create another keyframe in second one and move the ball. Here I create the keyframe and take a copy of it and paste it here. When I play the animation, you see that there is no such a problem anymore and it stays in place. This is one of the most common mistakes that people who are just starting to learn After Effects may face. And the solution is to check the fourth option in After Effects settings. And whenever we need a curve, hold down Ctrl Alt and click on these points. The curve will appear so that we can change the shape of our movement. So whenever you need a curve, by holding Ctrl Alt and clicking on this point, you can make the curve appear and change the shape of the movement. If you just want to move the handle you selected, hold down Alt and move the mouse. But if you want to move both handles, release Alt. Hold down Alt and put it here. You don't need to hold Alt to move the second handle. You can move it just by clicking the mouse. You can do the same for this point. Hold down Alt and place this handle here. And this handle can also be moved separately. And this way we can make a bouncing ball. The second mistake that most novices make is to rename a layer. Instead of pressing Enter and renaming, they will double click on that layer and this window opens. In other Adobe programs such as Illustrator and Photoshop, you have to double click to change the name. But in After Effects, renaming is different. When this window opens, you may be wondering what this window is and why it opens. This is because you double click on the layer name. A few things happen. You will see numbers at the bottom of the composition window, and you will see the layer rectangle 6 at the top of the composition window. Click on any of these tabs and that tab will be displayed. You can even close it by clicking on this option. Select the composition tab and you can see the original composition. So to rename this layer, if you double click on it by mistake and this window opens, don't worry. You can close it by clicking on this option. So in Illustrator and Photoshop, to change the name, double click on the layer name and change its name. But it is different in After Effects. And instead of double clicking, we have to press Enter from the keyboard and then change its name. If you see these numbers below the composition window, you will notice that you double click on the layer by mistake. The color of the numbers is the same as the color of the layer. If for example I choose yellow, this color will also turn yellow. So the color of these numbers varies depending on what color you choose for the layer. So if that happens, close this window and go back to the original composition and continue working. A third mistake you can make is to set the work area to one frame by mistake. For example, you wanted to set up a work area and by mistake resize it to just one frame of the animation. In this case, this error appears when you press the space button on the keyboard. As you can see, cached preview need 2 or more frames to playback. This is because you have downsized your work area. So if you see such an error, enlarge your work area. As I explained in the previous session, with B you can specify the beginning of work area, and with N you can specify the end of the work area. And if you press Ctrl Alt B, it will take the whole composition. So when previewing and rendering, be sure to pay attention to work area. The next problem that may occur is that after you have created your project, you may have mistakenly deleted or moved the project source file. And this is how your project is displayed. Of course, I taught you this problem before, but I needed to mention it here again. The Illustrator file used to build this project may have been deleted or moved. I changed the file name so that you know about the problem. We can introduce it in After Effects. Just right-click on the file and select the file option from the Replace Footage section. I select the missing Illustrator file as follows. As you can see, 8 missing files have been added to this session. And now my animation is displayed correctly. So be careful when you import a file into the After Effects and use it in your project. If you change its name or move it, you may see this problem that you can fix it easily. Another problem is that when you save the After Effects project file, you have to pay attention to the program version. For example, the version of my After Effects is 2022. If I save the project somewhere in AEP format and copy the contents of the folder next to the source file and give this project to my friend, and if my friend has the 2020 version of the After Effects, the project file will not open in the program and you will see an error. In this case, your friend must install the version you installed, or you can save this project with lower version so it can be easily opened in your friend's After Effects. To do this, from the File menu, select Save As. You can see lower version of the program, for example, version 18 or 17. Select the version you want. To find out what version of the program you use, select About After Effects from the Help menu. In this session, the program version is written, which is 22. Ask your friend to tell you the version of the program, and if he has installed version 17 or 18 of the program, you can save the compatible version from the File menu and Save As section. In this section, you can see the file name that copy 17 is visible. Click Save and send this new file with source file to your friend. So as a rule, someone who has the 2022 version of the program and wants to open the lower version of the program, there is no problem, and it opens easily. But someone who has the lower version of the program and wants to open the source file of the version 2022, there is an error that you must use this technique. Another problem that novices may make by mistake is importing the Illustrator file into After Effects as sequence. Now to understand, I double click here and select this Illustrator file. There is an option here called Sequence option. This option is for situations where you have rendered an animated scene in the 3D program such as Cinema 4D as PNG and you want to import it into the After Effects for further modifications. In this case, you must select the first photo and check this option, and then all the photos will be imported as a movie into the After Effects. Now if you accidentally check the sequence option for Illustrator or Photoshop files and open it in After Effects, even if these options are on composition and layer size, this icon will appear next to each layer instead of the Illustrator icon. Now for example, if I want to select this search box, as I also selected the layer size option, its transform box has been enlarged and I cannot easily select the components of the image. So be sure to uncheck the sequence option when you're importing Illustrator or Photoshop files. In this case, if you look closely at the layer section, you will see that the Illustrator icon is displayed, which means that the file has been imported correctly. This way you will not encounter this problem when you click on any of the components. Another problem in motion graphic is one frame overlap. Pay attention to this animation. Do you see the problem? If you don't see the problem, it's because you haven't yet trained your eyes. Frames are important in motion graphics. In this problem, frames of two motions are overlapped for one frame, and you can see both logos together for one frame. To find out, I take CTI to this frame. You see, two logos overlap each other in one frame, which is wrong. We want to appear Apple logo when the Google logo disappeared. If I zoom in on the timeline, you can see it better. The reason for this mistake is when you wanted to put these two logos in the timeline, you didn't use the Shift button. That's why I say use the Shift button to stick the layer to CTI. To fix this, I make this layer smaller. Now if you look closely, this is the Google logo, and from here the Apple logo appears. So this was a mistake that many people might make. In motion graphics, as I said, frame by frame is important, so pay attention to all frames.